Alright, so I'm in the new version of the P166, and I thought I would show you guys some basics that you can use uh, for your modeling. So I'll run through kind of the standard things uh, that you should know. Button controls are left click, allows you to select whatever you're looking at. If you hold right click, you can look around, you pivot about a point, you don't really move. You can hold left and right click and you can rotate. Or if you'd like to use middle mouse click, you hold that and you can also rotate. If you hold control and left click, you can move the sun. Lets you see some different shadow positions and just get an idea of what you're looking at. If something's too dark, if this side was too dark for you, brightens this side up if you bring the sun down. Scroll in, scroll out is zoom in, zoom out. All these buttons here on the right, if you see this little negative and plus, you can get rid of these. If you see the blob and text things, you can make these bigger or smaller. If you go to triangles, if your text is too big, some people run into the issue where they don't see any triangle groups down here in the bottom left. If that's the case, you're running into that issue, you should make this smaller, and these will be visible. These letters here are important. So P, these are all just letters on your keyboard you can click. So you can click F, B, R, L, T, and U. And then P to go back to your 3D kind of view. So P is just kind of a outside view. F is your front-on view. So this is good for texturing or if you need to just see a front-on view and select certain things. B is a back view, so you see the back of the car. R is a right view. And if you need to select things that are behind the wheels, or if there's a sub-object that's in your way, you can turn these off. So all my sub-objects, like my mirrors, the motor, the engine, exhaust, you turn these all off, they go away. Or if I needed to get behind the wheel, you can turn off wheels. And you can see the body, the main chassis. Or you can turn the main chassis off and do the opposite, just so you can focus on your sub-objects, like the interior. So turn all those on. You can load a background. I don't have any backgrounds, but if you don't like the black, you can load different backgrounds. Might make it easier for modeling. You can load a car model background too to use while you're modeling. There's a bunch of different options here as well. You have your Gorod, which is just smooth, kind of in-game texture, how it looks. You have your flat, which you can see kind of how the triangles are made, how everything looks without the smoothing on. Very blocky. You have your layers, so this is the different layers. So you can see like the exhaust is a different layer, the wheel, the gauges, the front nose and everything. Your wireframe, things are outlined in red, certain vertices and all that. Which is cool to see if you need to see inside or things that might be hidden will show up here, even if you're not in the right configuration to see them. You have your mappings. So this is almost like your smooth groups or mappings where when you press triangles and you do your control shift click, it will usually grab these mappings. So this whole green, if I do control and shift and left click, it will grab this whole green mapping. So it allows you to, instead of individually holding control and clicking all these individually, you can just do that, and it's a cool little shortcut. You have your groups, and I think these are smooth groups, basically. So the whole body is smooth to each other. You have your NC level, I'm not sure what this is, and LR swap. And I'm not super knowledgeable in those areas. But that's basically it. You can also do invert. So if you need to look at the bottom of the car, it's really useful. I'm trying to do like undercarriage stuff a lot, so invert is super helpful. If the shadow gets in the way too, if you don't like the shadow being there, if it's bothering you, you can just turn it off. It keeps it a little cleaner, or it lets you look at if your LOD2 spec is not right, then that will help you. So if you're in your main and you go to your LOD2, which is your shadow layer, see this is everything that's casting a shadow, then turning off shadow or turning it on will let you kind of see what is working. So we go back to the main, which is the detailed layer. I should say, what else? Reload textures, just reloads all your textures. You can have a wire overlay for your triangles. You turn that off, it'll just be smooth. And you can still select them, but you won't be able to see where they're actually at. It's nice. I think that's it for main small features, kind of on the main page. So sub-objects, what you can do is you can reflect the entire object. Give that a shot. Basically, just flips it. As you can see, it's not like the car is very symmetrical right now, so flipping it doesn't really do anything. But I can see that you see in here, yes. So like in here, you can see that all the gauges reflect and flip. So that's cool. You could do magic triangle sort, clean objects, clean. Just cleans up triangles, or if there was maybe bad normals or something, just compresses groups. Usually it doesn't really work for me, but I've seen some other people have used that, and it has worked for them. So main object. So this allows you to choose. So right now I'm on my main object. So if I press triangles, press A to select everything. This is what I've set to my main object. So the main chassis with the safety bar, the main shell, and the glass, and all the interior bits, but not the gauges and everything. They're their own separate thing. The bucket seat is its own separate object. The steering wheel is its own separate object, and the shifter and everything. So this I have set as my main. When I first loaded in, this is what I built upon. So for changing that, like say I had my steering wheel. When I made the steering wheel, you make your steering wheel in this 90-degree state. So like it definitely does not look like a steering wheel. So it should be facing straight up, and then after the fact you can adjust and tilt it. But once you bring it in and you've modeled it and done it up, you click object type, and you can choose from a whole list of options. So this steering wheel rotates with steering input. So when you're in game, this will rotate now with the steering input about the center axis. So wherever you brought it in, on the center of this S, this will rotate around that S, almost like it had an axis going straight up through it. So you can have this as an attachment. An attachment won't rotate with the object, so I can show you that. So when I include the driver and I go to my steering, if I just move the slider, you can see it rotates with the steering of the wheel. So when the wheel turns, the wheel will turn. Set to 0, but if I edit, go back to my steering, and we said it was an attachment, then this will stay in that configuration. It won't change, and it won't steer with the wheels anymore. So we'll put this back to steering wheel. Mirroring. It's a center seater, so it's not going to mirror. But if you had a left to right handed car, swap side for the dash is important. So when your player changes the driving side down here in the bottom left, right now it's central driving position, but that would be left to right. When they change sides, depending on what side they like to drive on, that needs to flip, or else your dash won't work. More basics, we can say scale, mapping, scale points, move all, bounding box, or positioning. That's important. So your bounding box is here, just bounding box for the car. Mine is a little bit big actually, but you can move this in. so it better fits the car. Move all, you can turn that on. So I'll turn off the bounding box. So move all just moves everything, the whole car. So it's either right, like a forward, or up and down for you. So like right, since the car is mirrored along the center, I have center points set. When I go right, it just makes the car wider, basically, because it's not moving those center points, it's just moving all these points and then mirroring them. So the car is just getting very wide. It's a very wide P1. But since some of these other parts are not mirrored, and since some of these mappings are only so big, you're seeing it's kind of breaking everything. So you definitely don't want to do that. So we'll just set it back roughly where it was. I think this is exactly where it was. Yep, that looks about right. So and then forward and back should just move the whole car forward. In case you want to just move everything at once, it allows you to move the whole, like all your sub objects are also moving with it. God, I'm not sure if I'll be able to put this back. You can just Control Z. Control Z is undo like any other program. So I can probably go back here. Okay. Control Z, and you can even hold it too. If you hold it, Control Z is quicker. So I'll put this roughly back real quick. Spam click. Up and down. I think you understand that too. Up and down. So you can turn that off. Scaling now. Scaling. This will break your mappings, but scaling stretches the car. So instead of just moving it, now it's starting to stretch it wider. So stretching it kind of works a little nicer usually. If you just want to pull it apart instead of moving it, this will actually make your car wider. So yeah, we're back to normal. So this will make your car more long. It will make your car longer, which gets a little funny at some points. Can get really wonky. Put it all back together and up. You can scale it like taller, basically. But some things get scaled more than others, and it gets a little weird. So I don't usually use that one. These I don't use at all usually. It's better if you're starting from scratch. You can maybe get away with that right off the bat, but it can get weird. Or scale plus mappings. This one is very useful. So if I want the car to be, if I said the car was just a little bit too small, you can scale it using ratios basically. So if I want it to be 2 times bigger, everything to be 2 times bigger, I just put in a scale factor of 2, and the whole car is 2 times bigger all around, which is huge. So quarter is 0.25. So now it's very small. And you start to get these bad normals. That just means triangles are intersecting on top of each other. So that can be changed. You'd have to go in and move your points and try to find when those triangles are breaking. It usually happens when things get a little too small. Things start to overlap on each other, and it breaks the game a little bit. So we make it big again. Those triangles don't get broken, so it's nice. So you basically get the idea of that. If the car was a little bit too big, sometimes if I'm importing models from an external source, it's a little too big, a little too small. A good tip or trick to have, if you know a wheelbase that you want, if you're in suspension and you have your wheelbase set, what you can do is set your wheelbase, edit model, and just scale it. If it was a little bit too big where your wheels aren't perfect, you can do 0.98 and just barely change the scale, and then come back out, and it should fit your model nicer. So 0.98 actually looks pretty good for the P1. It's not a bad scale, but I already had it set to the correct scale. So I'll just load it back up. Just a little bit, a little bit bigger. So more basics. I'll do, I think we can move on to triangles. There's nothing else in here that I think I've missed. If you have an OBJ, you can load it here. If you have an importer, a bunch of things in there. Saving your main object. This just saves your main object. So whatever's in your main. So I can say this is like P166 body. And now when I would load that, if I load it, it would be a P166 body, or let's see, I got a bunch of other things. I got an RC chassis. I can load that. And then my main is it's a little servo. Yeah, so you get the idea. So I can get it here, load the body back. So if I go into triangles, some tips for you. So control, click, and start selecting keeps all your groupings. If you press C for clear, clears everything. If you hold control and hold right click, you can do a box and select a bunch. If you don't want to select through, like now, if I select the side here, I just want these boxes right here. If I go to select these, it's going to select inside as well, and I don't like that. So you can either try to select your side. So I do like a box like this, and if I see the inside, I change my camera angle and hold shift and make a box, and that's a red box. We'll unselect. So you just got to tap them, and now I'm only selecting kind of my side boxes. Or on the left here, box select, you can change the facing. So it's only the boxes that you're facing. So if you control and make a box, you should only get ones that you're relatively facing. There you go. So that right there, I select it. I didn't get these because these are at a weird angle. I'm not facing those. I was only front facing to these squares. So that can be helpful if you select a bunch of these. Sometimes it can help you just select what you want to select. So it only really got that floor, but what it should have gotten there could have been like a bunch of other stuff too. So helps sometimes. As you see, A is all, C is clear, no triangle selected. Triangle buttons, you can turn that on. So you actually get buttons for the triangles instead. So if you actually want to modify this triangle, it selects it. When you click it, you can see which ones you're selecting. Can be easier for you. Allows you to do a couple things. I prefer no triangle buttons. Once you've selected a whole selection, you can decide to add two different LEDs. So your LED1 is your visual kind of model. LED2 is your shadow if you have three. If you only have two, I think your LED2 is your shadow and your hitbox. So you can't have a nice shadow. It will probably just be a square kind of hitbox. Or LED3 is just your hitbox. So LED2 is shadow, LED3 is hitbox if you have all three. So if I want my shadow to be my main here, I'll go add to LED2. Yes, I'll add it there. And now in my LED2, I have my main. And that casts this shadow. As you can see, there's no shadow back here because I only have this old transmission blocky bit and the main kind of back here for right now. So if that gives you an idea of how that works. And my LED3 is just a blocky mess of roughly what the P166 is. If you go to points, you can kind of get an outline. It shows you where the actual model is, so you can kind of get an idea just to try to hit those points. You really want to make sure you cover the wheels too, or else if you don't get all the wheel kind of close enough, then you'll go right through walls. Your wheels won't really collide. It gets into some funky issues. So try to at least keep this somewhat in the wheels. For the open car racer, I kind of let it be a little more open. Usually a covered wheel car or like a road car would have this completely over the wheels, so you can't get in there. You can't hit inside the wheels or go through the body. But for the open car, I thought if you're coming up here in a wheel or you're colliding, I thought sometimes the wheel can get in this little groove here when passing. Give some leeway. So and the back here. So it's just a blocky. When you flip over or if you hit anything, this is what you're actually hitting underneath. So yeah, and this is this wide to account for different configurations, have different different specs. Let's see. So I have triangles, back to triangles. So what you can do, actually, if I take this whole side, you should be able to hide. So I can hide triangles. If I'm trying to just work on the inside here or the underneath, now when I make my boxes, I'm not going to accidentally select all those triangles they just see. It's very helpful. You can unhide all, so these come back. Let's say we're selecting all these, and we can do. So this is kind of like I use these a lot. Really, is duplicate, break off, subdivide, mirror, unmirror, or double side, or single side, or delete. So for this car here, I used mirror. So when you have these over here, these are in blue, or outlined in kind of a purplish blue. These are mirrored points. So if I unmirror them, there's nothing over here now. So what you do is you can do mirrored, and when you're skinning, click the wrong thing. So when you're skinning, you can mirror, and it says here, build unmirrored. So you can actually build these points if you didn't want, for when you make your skin, this here, when you map it, if you put text or something on this side it will flip it and it'll be mirrored. It'll mirror it. So all your stickers, or if you put text, or if you put a livery on, it will flip the livery. So what you can do, select all your stuff, and if you didn't want it mirrored in this sort of way and flipped, you can build unmirrored. You click this, build unmirrored triangles on the reflected points. Sure. So now you see that this is, it's red and there's nothing over here, and I can select this and it's red, and it's its own piece now, which is really useful. I'll just leave it like that. So also you can do break off. So I'm out of sub-object points. I'll just delete one just to show you. So I'll delete that, delete the seat. So if I wanted to do a do sub-object, right? So you start from your main. If you do this, if you start from another sub-object, you can duplicate it, but then you duplicate whatever that sub-object is. So if I select it, I think this is my trumpets, yeah. So if I duplicate sub-object, instead of making a new one, it duplicates my trumpets. So there you go. If I made the motor longer, I'd have a V16, but we don't want that. So I'm going to delete that sub-object. We're going to go to main, do a new sub-object, and it just gets spawned, or it loads at the origin. So I'll just move it. I'll move it over here. Some basics to know when you're using these sliders. A lot of people go to reach for the red because they like that it's at an angle, but it's really kind of random. So in this space, you have no idea where you're sliding this. I don't know, until I look at it from this angle, I had no idea where it was going. Like, it's going over here, but like it looks like I'm putting it over to the right, where I'm not, because it's locked in this axis. It's locked this way and it's locked this way. So when you're in our view, you can only see the red, and you can go, this just lets you do a free move, but you're not moving it to your, I'll say this is the x-axis. So this locks it. So you can go only this way. This is only up and down. So I can't go left and right. I can only go up and down with this one, and I can only go kind of forward and backwards, and this is only left and right. So if you want a free move, you just press R or press your F is kind of the way to do it, and then grab it, so you know that you know where it is. Because if you're in P, I find if I go to grab it, sometimes I will, but usually when I grab it, I get lost. Because this looks like it's going left. It looks like I'm going over here, but when I actually move it, it's still in this line. It's still in line with the tires. If I start moving this around, it looks like it could be all the way over there now. Like, it looks like it's on the other side of the car, and now I'm bringing it back. It seems like I'm going along this line when I'm not. I'm actually just going up and down right there. It's very misleading. Seems like I'm going left and right. I'm not. I'm just going. See, because now I can't do it because I'm looking at the direction that's going. It's only going in this axis. So that's something I see a lot of people do. Just something to remember. So I'll get back to what I want to break off. So if I wanted something on the main, so if you're modeling and you want it, the nose. Let's just say this whole nose, I want to break this off to be its own sub-object. So I have my sub-object over here. I put it there. So I just go break off. It's going to break off select triangles into an existing sub-object. So then the unused non-reference points will be deleted. So I go, yep. So now it's done. So now I'm selected on this new sub-object here that I made. So now if I move this, I move the whole nose. So now I've made this its own sub-object. So if I want to bring this back to what it was, since my main was mirrored and now I've made it in sub-object, this sub-object isn't mirrored anymore. So I can do a mirrored sub-object, and everything in the sub-object is now mirrored. So it's mirroring this weird little bit of triangle. I don't know where that came from, but I must have selected something, right? But you could do that, or go triangles. Press A, select all your triangles. I'll get rid of whatever that is. And you can click mirror, and it will mirror it should mirror it about the center. But I believe it thinks that this is center. So you want to watch out for that. So the reason that the triangles weren't getting mirrored correctly is that in the points tab, you have these yellow point dots, and these here you can set, and they're basically just normal points when you make your triangles. But you can set it down to be center points. So these go right along your center 0 axes of the car. So that when you mirror your triangles, they're going to be even on both sides. So you can see that this triangle is exactly the same as this triangle when I mirror it about my center. You can do this without doing the points, basically by just grabbing all your points that you want to be in the center and dragging them over until you get to 0, and this will work exactly the same. But I find it gets not as nice smoothing here in the center, and they overlap points, which is just kind of a wrong way to do it. So if you do free, select them all, and make them center, then they look a little cleaner. Because it thinks that you're A, because you're mirroring it about A. If you can see that they're evenly spaced out from A, that it'll mirror it about that. So it's good to have, if you want it about your origin, make your subobject start at A, and then keep it within 0 on your left and right. Make sure this is at 0, and then it will evenly mirror the object. So I think if you go far enough here, it just knew to do that. Yeah, so you can see how weird it gets. It will get wonky if you try to move your A out here, put it somewhere weird. That's why a lot of my A's, or my attachments, I mean, are all kind of along the origin, or at least somewhere close where I can move them. So if I get out now, I think you'll see that if I change my colors to blue, where before that would change with me, it's not changing anymore. So you want to make sure that when you're in your subobject, you turn on use custom colors if you want the player to be able to change the colors. And changing colors is basically done by using these prefixes like C1, M, CM. M is just your main. So M2 would be your main body color 2. This is number 2 right here. So whatever M2 was mapped to, when I change the color here, it will change. Which makes sense. Hopefully makes sense to you. So if I do that, you can have your M4 as the skirts, but they're not on this configuration, so you can see that there is no M4. But when I change to one that has the sides, the radiator intakes, then I can change the sides customly, which is pretty cool. Your groupings, I can do groupings now actually for triangles. I'll show you some of that. So if I select all these, you can see that I've mainly made all these mapped to one color that you can customize, because I want it to be able to allow you to have the freedom to put a stripe on if you want it. So I just modeled the triangles to be roughly straight, as if they were painted on the car, and I set these triangles to M2 side. If you can see it, it has a red outline. I'll change the color so you can see the outline. So that's red. These are all selected. So you can even go, like I mentioned in the configurations video, I think I said control and click selects everything that was in that group. So you can see exactly what you're selecting. So if I go out, it'll reset, and because it's looking for this color, and it'll change it back to that. So let's say we want it to make the stripe a little wider. I'll select all these. I'll do Control Shift, and that worked out pretty good actually. So it gave me a good kind of line up the side. That's what I was going for, just as a test. And now I will duplicate them. And let's say copy. So C is copy. So we'll say it's a copy color of 2. And we'll say it's a stripe. Enter. And now these are unused. I'll left click and make sure that they are. And if you want to rename it, you just right click. And I can say stripe 2. Actually, I'll say, because this was the first stripe, this is stripe 2. So now when I go out, it's a big, long, big red stripe basically, and now all these are affected by C2 or main 2, color 2. So you make it whatever you want. So I'll go back in. These are all set to things. So C2 is just copies, M4 is a main. C1, if you're using C as copy, you basically are just saying that you already know that you have an M2 in here somewhere. You have to have an M2 in your triangle groupings before you can start saying copies. It's just a little cleaner. If I got rid of these M2s and tried to say they were just copies of 2, make sure I got all the 2s. Okay. Then it doesn't work. So now it just stays blue because there was no main 2 to copy, if you can see. So you got to make sure you have that in there. Black is good to have. You can just duplicate whatever texture. Black, let's say this, whatever unused, and then you can change the color of textures. If they don't have the prefix of like M or anything, if they're just named, you can't adjust them. So these will stay whatever color you want. If I put these on black and I make them black and get out, these won't change, and now these are the only ones that get affected. And now you can see that I made that new one, and it's not shiny. It's just a matte paint. No shininess to that portion of the stripe. So if I wanted that to match that black, go to triangles, control click, you get all these. So I go, oh, that's under black. I'll go to my cutout. Or actually, I'll go to matte first because I want to see what black is. So black is cutout. Its cutout is plain matte. So I don't really want that. So I want plain shiny, which I've already created. And if I click plain shiny to change my cutout in the cutout tab, it's now shiny. And you can do that by going to your other tabs. So your mapping is just saying whatever triangles you've selected where that you want them to have some sort of texture or be different than the others. So these are skirts here. So skirts I have set to side right. So my side right, if I go to cutout, my side right is my skin texture. So I have that set to skin texture is the texture page, which your texture pages you choose from your page tab. So I have my skin type, and I have some. I use the FE8 interior bits, for the interior. I mainly only use the felt kind of carbon interior stuff that was already given. Some MRT bits, made my own custom for the pump, for the gauge cluster. This is your glass alpha, I'll show you that in a second, and a tro white that I just use as a white texture. You can also just do no name. So if you type nothing in PNG and press enter, you get no texture. It's just a fixed texture. You don't reload it or anything. And this will just be a plain texture you can kind of go do nothing with, or do anything with. I mean, so if I have no texture, see, so now these are changed to no texture, which is just plain matte. I can do matte, I can do my constant shine options, but you can't do metal. The only way you can do metal now is going overlay plane and metal, and that only works with kind of an alpha texture or a no texture. You can do metal chrome, which is cool. I don't know if that changed anything. I'll see if maybe I put it on this one, it'll change. So if I went overlay plane, did a metal texture, this is now very chrome, very metally. If I move the sun maybe a little bit, it's better in game. You can see the mirrors. The mirrors are that chrome texture, so they look very shiny. And the trumpets, I put a light chrome texture on, and the bits in the back. So it's very useful. If you want an alpha, so an alpha just allows it to be a PNG, so I can see through it. Where these here are PNGs as well, but they have no alpha kind of to them. There's no like see-through bits. They can't be like half textured. So glass is just a box, but it's half. It's non-opaque. It's slightly transparent. So this allows for my glass is an alpha texture. So I just mapped it to whatever. So the glass allows me to see through the glass instead of it just being flat black. So or flat whatever color I set it to. So if I change glass to no texture, and turn it off of alpha, see? So if I go to solid, it would just be a solid. Even the alpha textures come out already solid. So if I had no texture, it doesn't change. It's just a solid texture. So when you're trying to drive, you wouldn't be able to see anything. So if I put that back to glass alpha, you'll notice that it doesn't do anything yet. You have to click on this, and you can do alpha, tree edge alpha, or alpha test. I'm not sure exactly what those do or if they're any different, really. I've just kind of used the alpha to have the shine options to use glass, and then it lets it have a slight shine on glass. Or if you want it to do some filters for your trumpets for the individual throttle bodies, I've done that as an alpha texture. So it just looks cool from afar that you can see through the meshes on the tops. I can go into points. So points are some options here, which is nice. This is a little busy. It's not as busy as some of my other mod creations, but still is hard to kind of see what I'm clicking. If I'm trying to click this here, I'm trying to move the body. So I'm trying to move that. So if I was up here, it's very difficult to know, like, oh, nothing's moving. Like, oh, I click something. That's something inside the car. So what you can do is if you change the angle here, it is easier to see, but if it wasn't, you can select a bunch of these and turn on hide, select it, and now it's very easy for me to see what is my side because I've just hid all these interior triangles. So it's pretty useful. I use this a lot actually when I'm working on a model that's a lot more busy. And then if you want everything to come back, you just unhide all, and these will come back. Or you can hide unselect it. So if you are selecting these and you hide unselect it, everything else will get hidden, and you'll only be working on these points, which is nice if you just want to focus on getting these right. So hide all. Points, you can show all. You can show layered points, which is nice. This is whatever's in your layer. I'm pretty sure if I do show all, this is a separate layer that I have that it opens up the, I say the hood, I guess technically, not really, but it opens up the cigar of the top of the car, so I can see those points now. But if I turn them off, they go away. It's a little lip that gets put in here on different configurations. So just layered, show all shows all your different points from everything. So the buttons for trace, if you do off, you don't see those lines there, and it won't allow you to extrude or a laugh command. But if you do include, that just means it's including this last point that I just pressed. So if you do exclude, it's not going to include that point. So it's just basically excluding the point, or you can include that point for when you want to do an extrude or a laugh. So if I extrude this now, I'm including this point, so I can just say the orange plus red, and it'll move all these points, and I'm extruding this little line. Or if I go back and I go exclude it, so I don't want this one, and I do this, when I extrude it, it's just going to do that top, and this point it's using is just a reference of like how far that I need to go. Now the issue with this is that this point is connected to the car, so it's pointing the car as well, but if this point was just a point floating in air, you could pull this point and then you would have no issues. So if you're extruding something, we can say, let's say, usually I do this with circles. So if you want to make a circle, I'll show you that. So you have to be in a side view. So you'll see here now, if I do a new point, yeah, there we go. Or choose a point at least. So now I have all these options to choose from. So this is my new point. So I would start with this. I'd move him somewhere. So he's right in the middle of the car. So if I wanted like a cylinder coming out of the side of the car here, I start over here. You can press R. And I'll move them here in the middle, and you can do create a circle. You can mirror the point, make it a sub-object. You make these points even have a effect on the kind of shadow around it. So if you see these are blue, these kind of have, it makes it a little darker. So if you do this, extra dark, ambient lighting, very dark. This is more bright. So see now these are darker here, but this one kind of got like bright around that point. It just kind of shades it brightly. So I can click this one, make it blue. So now it's more uniform darkness. So that's an option to do. I'll go back to this. So now we can do create a circle, and a number of points be created in circles. So if I was doing like a bolt, a 0.05 of a meter, it's still pretty big, but so now we got a little hexagon here. So now if I click on the center one again and I extrude, usually this works nicely where it knows that I've tried to, it will trace out these lines here, and then you move into the center one because you want to extrude it about this point. So if I didn't do that, it would only extrude this. You'd be missing out on this one because it's using this one as a point to move with. So now if I go in here, it knows that I want it those, but I'll show you what happens. What you're supposed to do is trace around these. So now see it's starting to trace, so it's following this line. So don't worry about the red line, it's just doing these orange lines is what it wants to make. So see it gets all the way around, and then when I go back here to the center, it completes the circle. Because these two, the two end pieces will just automatically go together. And you can choose to extrude that. So now you have lathe or you have extrude. So I usually extrude. You have some options. You have orange and outside, orange plus the red and outside, or inside or double, like double-sided. So if I did orange inside but no red, when I pull this out, see I get bad normals already because they're on top of each other, but once I've moved the triangle, they go away. So you can see that it's only doing the outside, but it's missing this. It's missing this one here because I only said do the orange lines, not the red line. So it's not good. I kind of want the I kind of want that red line. I want it to be a full hexagon. So I'll do orange plus red and outside. So do that, and now I can pull this blue one is linear, right? So I'm only going along my X. I can't mess it up. But if I started pulling this one, you can see how now the hexagon would get a little wonky. It's very hard to get it perfectly to come out. So now if I look at it, I did a pretty good job, but it's not perfectly, like when I look up here, you can see it's not perfectly straight out. So you Control Z, you can just pull this out this way straight, and you have a perfectly straight hexagon. It actually thought, when I said outside, it should have done the outside, but it actually thought when I built it, it's the other way around. So it's not a big deal. When it's inside, because now when you look from the outside, it looks invisible, but you can see the inside of it. If I did this and did double-sided, it will do both sides. So when you look from the outside, it has a texture. When you look inside, it has a texture, which can be nice and sometimes, but that will double your triangle count. So you really don't want to try to use that if you have something that's really busy. So like on the main body, it's only one-sided. Because if I did double-sided, you can see my triangle count up here goes up because it has to do double the triangles. So that can really affect your model. So I'm just going to do single-sided, but since I want it on the outside, I just flip triangles, flip tries. So now it's only on the outside. So it looks a little weird. So what I'll do, I'll go to build. So now I want to cover this up in build mode. So in build mode, what you can do is if you go in a left rotational anti-clockwise pattern, it will build the triangle in this way. If I go right, so if I go in a clockwise pattern, you don't see the triangle. So the triangle actually gets built on the other side that you just built it. So if I flip it, you'll see it is there. It's just on this side of the triangle. So if I zoom in, you'll see it's there. So it's black, but it needs to be flipped. So a little tip. So then you just go around in a clockwise motion. It's a little funky to kind of wrap your head around sometimes, but just as long as you go around clockwise, you can fit it all in. And there you go. You now have a huge hexagon sticking out of your F1 car. But then you continue to make more and more of these, and then you end up with something like this and feel good about yourself. And then so I just, if I don't want it, select it, or I do the Control Shift select, and it kind of picks up that these are all together, even though it's going into the car here, and it should maybe grab this. It knows that no, like this is its own object. We don't want it to grab that. It's also under its own triangle group, so I'm just going to delete it by pressing delete on your keyboard, and it's gone. That auto mirror when you build is important too. If you had, let's say I want to build, so the points are still there. So points I can delete by pressing all, delete unused. So there's a bunch of points that we just created and then we deleted them, but they're still here using up space. So I just delete unused and now they're gone because there's no triangles on it. So if you want to delete points, see this point here I can't delete, right? So if I click delete, it can't go away. So in order to delete points, you have to select all the triangles that are on that point. You have to delete them, then go back to this point, and now you can delete it. Even though this one is technically still in use for some reason. It's probably in another configuration that's being used, but that's the main point. That's the gist. Is that you have to select all triangles that are using that point, or else it's going to tell you that that point is being used. See if this one I can get. Points in use. Huh. Yeah, it's weird. It must be being used somewhere else. So if I go back to my main point, we can still see these points. If I go triangle, or I go map, sorry, and I want to map a triangle right here, I have auto mirror off. So if I build this, and I'll make it, I'll set it to black so we can see it. So there's a little triangle floating there. If I go to the other side, there's going to be no triangle, obviously. So, but if you're trying to make something that's symmetrical, like I modeled the whole half of this side, if you're modeling one side, you want it to be the same on the other, unless, you want it to be asymmetrical in certain points. So what I do is you click on this, and you can then just mirror it by clicking mirror, and now it'll be over here. Or if that's a little annoying for you and you want it to just automatically be mirroring, you just turn auto mirror on. And now when I build my points, you can see over here, it's building those points on the other side of the car. You can see it's making the little blue triangles. And to go over and check, we'll see it's the exact same thing on both sides, which is nice. And select all, and I just delete it. Yeah, so I think that wraps it up for basics. I think that's a lot to give you a good start on whatever mod you want to create or whatever you're ambitious to make. And I'll be back for the next one.